can shut down a table. I can make a table run out of money. I've done it a couple of different times in my life. It's rare, but it can happen. And I have to hope that there is a massive amount of variance in my favor a couple of times a year. And if that's true,
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Craps. This is John from Pro Craps, and I've got my good friend JB here, otherwise known as MyopiaMovie. He's one of the math guys that can be a little bit annoying sometimes in the chat, but he's actually a math guy, a real life, honest to goodness math guy. JB, how you doing? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good to have you, man. Good to be here, man. I appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me on. I enjoy doing these things. So
these are fun, and like I said to you, like over email, we talk a lot over email. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So tell everybody, just because we call you the math guy, right? And I joked, you actually are a math guy. What is it that you do?
yeah, so I used to work in a pretty quantitative field in the private sector, but I'm a professor now. So I teach heavy mathematical theory type of stuff. It has applications to business and finance and investments and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like applied mathematics and statistics and probability, those sort of things.
Which is funny because typically math guys play a math guy way, right? The normal.
So I'm told, yeah.
Books way. So you're told, but you don't. And we talked about this a little bit last time, right? Is that why? I have to kind of know why. I mean, it's been bugging me for a while to really dig into that with you because
sure,
it's so many people get on me. You know this, right? About the math way to play or the anti-math way to play, and somebody who knows the numbers and the probabilities and the stats and all that stuff. You choose to play a whole different way.
Yeah, I play, and we can talk about the details if we want as well. But
Sure.
just for now, kind of summary it a little. I play a hyper aggressive strategy. I 99% of the time I play place bets and right side stuff, and that's only because I have tried to play the don't side and things like that, but I don't find it that fun. And so even if I happen to be winning a little bit, it's much more of a grind and I don't really get as much enjoyment out of it. And so it's not a lot of fun to me. So I'd rather just try and swing for the fences. There is at least partially mathematical reason for that. And the reason is, I guess how I would explain it as follows. I believe in the numbers enough to know that all the time, every time you're at the table, as long as you have money exposed, you are in some sense bleeding some of that away, right? Every roll is an opportunity to win or lose money, but on the average, you're going to lose a little bit of money every time. And so the more you play, the deeper the hole you are constantly digging yourself. If you plot somebody's expected outcomes over 200,000 rolls, which is probably as many as I've done in the last 5 years or something like that, because I play a lot. That's a really, really negative number in percentage terms or absolute dollars, depending on where you start. Whether you're playing bubble craps for $6 across or whether you're playing $6,000 across at a live table, in percentage terms, you're digging a really deep hole. Mm-hmm. The only way to have any hope in the world of digging out of that hole is that you have to be able to catch fire once or twice a year or something like that. And if you are a hyper aggressive player and you happen to catch a really long roll, the way I play, I can shut down a table. I can make a table run out of money. I've done it a couple of different times in my life. It's rare, but it can happen. And I have to hope that there is a massive amount of variance in my favor a couple of times a year. And if that's true, I can dig most of the way out of, or even on occasion, maybe dig all the way out of the hole. If I want to play as much as I do and lower the variance, I'm gonna lose a little bit less money at a time, but I'm just gonna basically grind myself to death and have no real hope to dig out of the hole by the end of the year. So that's not a super specific answer, but that's a little bit of what it is.
It's it's perfect. I was talking to my friend Greg at 555 Craps. We were talking on the phone about a week or so ago, and this exact topic came up. And we were both talking. He's Greg's a grinder, right? Greg is going to play the don't pass with some odds and just let that thing cook all day long. he's like me in the respect that happy to go to the casino with a grand or two and walk out with $500 profit. Happy to do that all day long, and that's it. Paycheck style of play, basically. And he said, I've been a winner most of my life because I'm playing this low volatility strategy, and I have the hammer most of the time. So for that
Sure.
reason, I end up ahead. And I said this to you before too. I said, I've been ahead. I'm probably a lifelong winner, and people don't believe me when I say that because I'm so damn conservative, right? I won't lose a ton because I do play relatively conservatively, but I have hit those home runs like you're talking about. I think over the course of my life, I've had multiple, 5-figure wins that cover all the hundreds that I've lost over,
Sure.
many, many times. It's what you're talking about. For me, it's over a lifetime. I've had probably half a dozen to whatever really strong wins. Like, hey, that just bought back what I lost for the last 6 years,
Yeah.
$100 at a time. We're speaking the same thing. I'm not going for that. You just happen to catch it. Like there's times where,
Sure.
you can't help but win sometimes when you're on one of those rolls, right? It happens
Yeah.
around you.
If
And
you're betting in a way that's not sort of designed to dodge all the bullets, yeah, you sometimes you can just stumble onto almost any approach to the game
mm-hmm,
has just as every strategy has a whole, all of them have a sequence that if you were to handcraft it, you could do very well at. And it's just
totally,
some
totally.
strategies, it requires a tremendous parlay in some sense to get to that point. In some strategies, it's more just avoid a bad thing for a long period of time. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really it's luck in a different flavor, right? It's all the same
Yeah.
general thing. And like once you, at least the way I look at all of it, once you look at I look at the entire world, not just the game of craps, in terms of just expected outcomes and probabilities. That's just how my brain is really trained to see every decision that I make. Once you see those kind of things, it just kind of unfolds that way. I think
Right.
I'm not anticipating ever being a lifetime winner. It's not impossible, but as much as I play, if you were to just take my average bet times the number of rolls that I'm exposed in a given year, that's a really big number. I'm sort of starting out in the hole. And if you kind of look at it as that way, you say, well, if the expectation happens in, I might have 100,000 roles that I'm a part of in a year. Well, even if I've got, only a dollar or two of expected value at risk every roll, that's a lot. That's a significant chunk there.
Mm-hmm.
I got to climb. I got to do if I have any hope to beat the house for that year. Let's say it's kind of an arbitrary time frame, but let's just call it a year. Well, I've got to catch a couple of monsters. The worst thing I can do, given the way that I play, is if I happen to be at the table for a monster, not capitalize on it, right? Because I'm gonna lose all of the point sevens, all the short rolls, and those are going to happen a bunch of the time. I'm going to lose so much money there if I don't even give myself a chance to win a significant sum on the 3 or 4 top 10 rolls of the year. I mean, I'm like digging a hole and then throwing the shovel back up and then trying to climb out. Like I just got no
Sure.
hope at that point.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because
It's
you
not
think
for the
about
faint
that.
of heart, though.
No, no. Well, but today on my morning show today, I ran $6 across, and I happened to hit. I ran a dollar bet up to $25 and hit it. Like that's what you're
Yeah,
talking
I
about,
watched
right? I
it.
hit
Yeah,
hit a
yeah,
crazy variant in like 11 rolls. That shit happens all the time. But what they say, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so the monsters that I've caught, I would be the guy you would describe as saying, man, that guy should have made more money on the table. Because,
sure.
I start with a little bit of a grind, a couple bets pay off, half pressing, whatever. And I get to, like, I always say this, like if I start with a grand and I happen to win 500 in a roll, I'm like, I'm locking that $500 up. And then
Yeah,
I'm going to be hyper. Then I turn into you. Then I go hyper aggressive from that point on. But at that point, I'm probably 16 rolls in,
yeah,
right? So where I was collecting on, you know, whatever $1,000 bets on the 5 and 9, those could have been at table max.
sure.
So you miss out on it. But again, the conservative player would say, hey, let's grab some money, make sure we lock up something out of here, and then go. But you're already past. You're already here because you're thinking way past it. I think that's an interesting math way to look at that. I really like how
Yeah,
you
it
describe.
is.
Again,
No, I think one of the things that a lot of people, and I've played with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people
sure.
over the years. Many of them will watch me play, and they kind of fall into two categories or there's more than two, but two of the most sort of interesting categories to me are one personality type will watch and sort of talk as if they is like, well, if I had the money, I would do that too. And maybe that's true, but it's just, and I haven't always had the bankroll that I currently have. So I got to tell you, you can say that you'll press from a $3,000 six to a $6,000 six, but until you
That's
get the
hard.
opportunity to do so, you don't know if you're going to do that or not.
Yeah.
And I don't always know that I'm going to be able to pull the trigger too. And I don't have a literal algorithm that I do every single time, but I don't often stop in like intermediate things. And maybe it's not 3,000, but maybe a $300 six. The first time you ever get a $300 six and it hits, you're unlikely to go just press it to 600, right? That's a thing that I do. And there's a whole lot of people that sort of act like they would do that too, but I don't know if they would. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying until you've
No,
actually had the money on the table, you don't know what.
that's a real person. I remember like my first $1,000 nine that I got to. That was the first.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it because the nine was the one that got me the big money. And
Yeah.
I had done my thing, right? I had collected and got some money locked up, and I said I was going to go for it and see what happens. I'm already happy with my profit. I got the nine to $1,000, and it hit, and like that moment of like I remember getting flushed,
Yeah.
and like what do I do now, right? Because here comes $1,400, and I'm like
$1,400.
I'm like that's at the time that's rent.
Of course.
And I'm like, do I
Look,
how do you not- how do you not take
that might be 4 buy-ins, of course.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at the time I was probably buying in for between $300 and $500. How do
There
you
you
not
go.
collect that $1,400? And like you're saying, and I did. I totally collected it. I collected it.
Of
I
course.
said the next one I'm going to go press it up again.
Yeah.
And it hit 2 more times. Which means
Yeah.
I would have been here on the third one. But that's hard, man. That's like
Yeah.
mental gymnastics. It's like you're fighting yourself because anybody with half a brain is going to collect that money.
Yes.
But you're not here to have half a brain. You checked your brain in and you walked in, right?
And I don't, yeah. And it's like I said, it depends. Like I said, I don't have a literal exact pattern that every single time I go.
Mm-hmm.
I do on occasion take a same bet here and there and things like that. It's not, it just depends. I mean, it kind of depends on my own mindset. How, if it's going really well or really poorly, I tend to be more aggressive, but I go from 1,000 to the next time I press, it goes to 2,000. The next time I press from 2,000 goes to 5,000. I power press. I drop 200 more bucks and go from 2 to 5. That one takes some, that one takes a little bit of a gut check. It's really tough. Like, I mean, it's not that the money means nothing to me, but my only hope is to, if every roll that gets to 1,000 only has 1 or 2 more 5s or 9s, for example, in it, then I'm just, that's going to be sort of the bad luck of it all in some sense, right? Now I know that most of them are not going to have 2 or 3 more, but if I just need one out of a few to have 3 more, or if I can just catch the one roll that gets me to 5,000, I've had at my casino, 5,000 is the maximum on the outside numbers and 6,000 on the 6 and 8. And then you can put the bets on top of that. So the most I've ever had on a number is 10,000 because I had a $5,000 place for, and then a 250 with, it's 20 times odds where I play, 250 with 5,000 odds on the 4.
Wow. Yeah.
And the VIG and the place bet, it's kind of nice on a 20X table because just for the smoothness of it all, when it hits, the VIG is 250, but that's also the flat bet payoff. So they just hand you 20 grand. And I'm only going to get to that. I've only been to that point twice in my life.
Right.
I don't want to overstate it here. I don't want to pretend like this
I
is
hear
a thing that just happens all the time. But
Right.
The second kind of guy who annoys me a little bit more, there was a guy I was playing. I don't know him, but I played with him several times, and we had caught a really good roll. And I think I got my 5 up to 5,000. It did not at that time. I think I went from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 to 5,000. So I was collecting a decent amount on the way. It wasn't full presses that time, and other numbers were hitting. But that was the really big one. And when the roll finally ended, I probably, I don't know, let's say, I had 5,000 on the 5. Maybe I had a total of about 10,000 on the place bets when it all got washed away. And the way this guy was playing, and I never said anything to him about, I don't really care what you do. He was like, 85 inside, take 2 hits and come all the way back down and just be done with it. I'm like, fine, I don't care. And when we got done with the roll, I probably had made, I don't know, 15 grand or something like that on that roll, but I left another 10 out there. And as soon as we got done, I don't know this person from anyone. He goes, I cannot believe that you left all of that money and just lost all of that out there. And I was like, first of all, like, mind your business, I guess is my first reaction to that. Like, I'm not commenting on your play, but we just had, like, hey, guess what, buddy? When the guy 0.7s, you and I both lose what we put out there. Okay, we're in exactly the same boat. We make a negative 100% return on our place bets on a 0.7. Just you and I both. But you also are now saying, okay, but if we happen to get a 35 roller, then I'm going to get, I'm going to maybe make 1.7 times my money. And I made like 15 times my money. So I don't know. It's such a weird critique to me how they do that. Yeah. But yeah, that's,
well, and I've said this
it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a math.
No.
It's not a math. Well, it's a very complicated. The math behind it is complicated. It's more. Well, it goes back to this. I'm going to embrace variance, and I'm going to try and hope to get hyper lucky a couple of times. Because if I just go into grind mode, I know I can't win. I cap the upside so much that I might not lose a ton, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But I'm only starting with what I'm sort of willing to lose in the first place. And so from that standpoint, I kind of, in order to mentally prepare myself, I kind of look at it as soon as I buy in that I'm just not getting that money back. Like that is I'm buying a lottery ticket for my buy-in. And most of the time you don't win the lottery. And it's not exactly that in practice, but that's kind of how I have to mentally frame it, or else it starts to get a little bit wacky.
So it's just so interesting to hear you talk like this. I want to wind way back a minute because I want you to address something really quick. Sure. You said earlier that if you're going to lose whatever, if you're going to see 100,000 rolls, and this is going to be a house edge kind of question, right? Because people don't understand how the house edge really works. And I think you framed it like spot on. You're going to see 100,000 rolls, depending on what you're betting, or 100,000 shooters, whatever you want to call it. You're giving up 1.5, 2, or 4, whatever your percentages are. You're giving it to the house just out of the gate. Like, even if you lose and win at the exact rate that you should, and over 100,000 rolls, you will see the exact shape of the pyramid that you're supposed to see. You're going to give up, let's say, 3.5% of your money over 100,000 rolls. And if your spread is $1,000, you're going to make up a lot of money over the course of those 100,000 rolls. That's what you were saying. Did I summarize that right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's more than one way to think about it, but one way to think about it is, let's just say you play 220 inside or something more like a little closer to what most people would consider reality, right?
Right.
Well, I don't have the numbers memorized, but on your place 5 and 9s on a per roll basis, the house edge is probably something like 0.7% or something like that. You may have them memorized better than I do. And not too different on the 6 and 8, maybe a little lower than that, but
0.62 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So let's call it a little less than 1% on every roll, and let's throw away. You have to sort of abstract away from the come out rolls or the bets are off and this that. Let's just kind of throw that away for a minute, just to make the math a little more simple. I've got about $220 out there, and a little less than 1%, so I'm losing about $2 a roll. Mm-hmm. That's how. I mean, that's not an opinion. Right. That's just how it is. Okay. Well, most people don't play as much as I do, and they certainly don't play because I get to play a lot of my volume at a private table or a semi-private table or low volume tables where the dice are rolling. Sometimes every 5 or 6 seconds. And if it's really going, certainly no more than every 10 or 12 seconds on average. I'm getting 5 rolls a minute, 300 rolls an hour. And I might play 6 hours a day, 5 days a week sometimes.
Like a casino's wet dream. You're getting all those rolls an hour. I mean, they're lucky to get 40 rolls an hour out of the rest of us, right?
Exactly, right?
It's crazy.
Well, part of that is because I won't go on Friday night or New Year's Eve or anything like that. But that's, I'm I'm crafting it. I'm forcing it to
Sure.
be that way a little bit on purpose. But that you have, in my opinion, you have to think. You don't have to always. Doesn't have to be the first thing you think about. But on some level, you should have at least a general knowledge of what you are supposed to be winning or losing, what have you, on a per roll basis, because it helps you
Mm-hmm.
understand. We were texting about this a little bit earlier. It helps you understand how long you can expect to survive, right? Of course, things
Yep.
can go really bad or really good. Of course, you can win money on any given day, but if you kind of had to, I think it makes sense, if you're going to be doing this semi regularly, to have some at least back of the envelope idea of how much money do you need to buy in for to survive. And this is what I like about what you've been doing this week. I buy in for an amount that is equivalent. I don't do a specific number, but it works out to
Sure.
be somewhere in the, close to 100 shooters, quote unquote, worth of ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And part, several reasons for that. Number one is that I play such an aggressive strategy. I'm very rarely breaking even on a shooter. Certainly it happens, but it's going to happen the minority of the time. Am I going to even, sniff breaking even on a shooter? Number one. And number two, because I might be going so quick, I might have, 100 hands in, a course of a 5-hour day. That's not going to happen at a full table with
No way.
hop action, elbow to elbow, right? It's just not going to be that
Right.
way. So the, for me to me, it just wouldn't be worth, it if I brought, you know, the equivalent of 15 or 20 shooters worth of money, because that might, if it's very unlucky, I'm going to shoot through that in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then why am I driving an hour to the casino to play for
Well,
30 minutes? Like, I don't want to take the
and
time to do that.
right, and with the Aaron Judge mentality that you've got, that makes total sense, right? So
Yeah.
what I did today. So people probably watching this a month from when I did this, but I did a strategy today where I ran $500 at a bubble craps table with a $6 spread.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're gonna go, actually with $6 plus a little don't pass action. Like, let's just run and take 50 cracks at the home run. And my thinking was, and I kind of pulled this from you a little bit from our text. And I remember you saying last time we had talked that at some point you do kind of turn into John for a second, and if you can, you pull back enough to cover your initial spread. Every so often you'll do that. And I'm like, today,
Yeah. I
the
don't
minute I
really
win,
pull back, but I do collect a little bit along the
I mean,
way.
I mean, collect enough to do it.
Yeah,
And so
sure.
what my thought was today was, if I get any bet, pay $6, which was or $10, which was my initial spread.
Yeah.
If any bet pays $10, I'm racking that first payment. If I can
Sure.
get it to that point, right? And then I'm like, who cares? So 50 shots at it becomes 65 or 70 shots at it, because there's going to be those times where you're going to get the $6 payment or $9 payment, whatever it was on the four, and
Mm-hmm.
you pay for more cracks at it. And it's an interesting way to play. And I titled the videos in that series "Playing with an Enormous Bankroll, but Relative." And you're doing enormous bankroll at a regular size table that most of us can't do. And
Yeah,
I think it's the same.
but
It's the same mentality, right? It's that drop in the zero
it's,
thing. You
yeah.
gotta.
What I like about this, I mean, I watch all of your stuff and I like all of it for different reasons, but I like what you're talking about this week. I watched the one you're talking about. I watch all of your videos. The the idea is, if you can play a lottery ticket style strategy, but you need to have some understanding of how many lottery tickets you can buy in for, how many
Right.
chances you have.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to have a strategy that can win a ton. Well, there is no way to have a strategy that can win a ton that is not exposed to a lot of risk. I promise you, we could get paper and pen out and draw pictures, and I could show it to you someday. We'll probably do that live on the show. You can't, if you want to accept the ability to have an actual massive upside, you have to introduce the probability or some possibility of there being downside. So you can't buy in for a table. I mean, look, I have people who will come to a $50 table and buy in for $200, and I'm like, what are
Yeah.
you
That's
hoping to
insane.
happen here, man? You got, of course,
That's
of course,
one
you
lottery
could
ticket.
strike.
Yeah.
You exactly. That is exactly the same thing. Is
Mhm.
going, well, I'm going to buy one scratch off and see what happens. Like, of course, it might work, but
Mhm.
man, you got a very, very low probability of that thing happening. The next hand has to be a really good one or you're done. And I think we've talked about this before. When you drop down in stakes, whether that's lower table limits or going to bubble craps, you got to shake. There's no reason to have a stigma associated with it. You should be thinking about your bankroll in terms of, on at least some dimension, your survival probability, not only for an individual hand, but for some sort of longevity, right? If you have an infinite bankroll, then yeah, you can buy in for, you could buy in for a relatively small amount and just know, hey, most days I'm going to be done here in 30 minutes, but come back every day and do it. That's fine. But if you don't have the bankroll to survive some level of volatility, you have to make a choice. You can either play the more grindy style, right, or super conservative style, just put 25 on the pass or don't and kind of leave it at that. And you can expect to last for a couple of hours on, $300. Now, you're not guaranteed to, but you could certainly, on average, expect to do that. Or you can take your $300 and turn it into the equivalent of 50 shooters and bubble craps, and take 50 swings like you did this morning and say, look, of course, I am most likely to burn through the 300 because I'm probably not going to roll 5 tens in one hand. But if I do, I'll make $300 on that one hand alone, and then the rest of it's gravy at that point. And I think one of the things that really gets messed up for people is when you have, if whatever your largest win is becomes in your mind, I think psychologically, a new baseline. It's hard to feel as happy. So I still remember the first time I hit a $300 six. I still remember that day. I remember exactly where I was, and I was hopping around like, I mean, it's hilarious now because I don't really get excited no matter what happens. But I remember how excited I was to hit a $300 six. It doesn't feel that way anymore to hit a $300 six. I don't get excited about it in the way that I did. And I think that happens to most people. And so if you've ever been at a table and won $1,000, it's really hard psychologically to convince yourself that I'm going to go play bubble craps, and if I hit a home run, I'm going to win 200 today.
Yeah.
And so they don't do it because we're sort of chasing the high that we can't. And I do the same thing. Like, that's part of the reason that I play the way I play is because, gosh, if I just to go down and play 110 inside, I used to play like 54 across, take 3 or 4 hits without pressing and then start pressing. That would be so boring to me now that even if you could guarantee like, hey, the table's going to be better than average and you're going to come out a little bit ahead, I'd be like, I really don't care. It's not exciting enough. And I think that's a bad thing, but that's kind of the reality.
Is it all about the rush though? Because like we always say, about drug users, right? The first time, you never get as high as the first time. And you chase that shit forever. And craps, everybody I know, I bet you probably 90% of people you talk to won big their first time. Big in relative to what they bought in for the first time, and they get, they're hooked, and that's the end of the story. I hear you about chasing that thing. It never feels the same. However, I don't know. I mean,
well, I just think it's one of the things that's an impediment for people to actually convince themselves to go down and play bubble craps or something like that, right?
I guess that's what. So it's all here though, right? It's like, to me, I get stoked, and maybe it's because I'm kind of nerdy. I guess I get really stoked at those when I turned $500 into $110 profit with dollar frickin' chips, right?
Yeah,
that's putting in work, and I look at that and go, that was a huge percentage win with. It was still work to get it done. And my mind goes to, okay, that was 500 with dollar chips. It was 5,000 with $10 chips. Now we're talking about $800 in profit. I'm doing percentage math in my head. Yeah. I'm adding zeros, or I'm looking at things in terms of units won, not so much the dollars won. And I think going back to the $1,000 9 or the $300 6, it's because you're looking at it in actual dollars. And it's not. Yeah,
and I think
you got to look at it as though it's not dollars. I think to me, if I win $10, I'm happy that I won anything because it's hard to do. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, that's where my mind goes. And I guess I'm probably the third guy that you hate because I'm so conservative. And I could never can I win? I guess that's a question. Like, can I actually go paycheck mentality? I'm doing this whole thing, right? Is that a way to do it? Or do I need to have some home runs in there? Because every strategy I've played so far has lost $5,000 at least once. Do I have to build?
I can't wait. I wish.
Things, right?
when you get done with the paycheck series, I'm going to calculate exactly how many rolls you did, and then just like pick a random strategy and calculate its per roll thing, and show you that you came up with a lot of really fun ways to wind up in exactly the same spot as if you hadn't done any of those fun things. I think that's interesting. Again, that doesn't. I'm not saying that as a critique of what you're doing. I think it's interesting what you're doing, and I think people should play. I think people should get some. I think you should be able to get an extra amount of enjoyment out of the way you play, whether that's strategizing this way or just, I think one of the things that helps you, I think you're a unicorn in some sense, because you have the puzzle of it all, or the at least apparent puzzle of it all. You get some utility from solving the puzzle in some sense. And so you find it fun. And I mean this in a positive way. This is a compliment, not a critique. You find it fun to be like, wow, I started with $1 on the 10 and I got up and hit a $25 one or whatever it is. And I think that's awesome. And I think if everybody could have that mentality, people would, everybody would have more money, because we could all play for less than we do. And that means different things to different people, and get the same level of enjoyment. But it's really not that way. And I think one of the things that's dangerous about the super grindy kind of strategies is when they do inevitably get a hole blown through the middle of them, now you're really having to make a decision, because you know the strategy. You said this today. You did your paycheck thing again today, and it was a really unlucky series of events. You found the hole. You just sniped yourself to death, and all of a sudden you've dug a $2,500 hole in a strategy that is trying to grind out $100 at a time and is not always active. And you can see, you know it's going to take you a long time. You are unlikely to climb out of the hole completely, but even if you do, it's going to take you a long time. So what happens to the average person at the actual craps table is they press, literally or figuratively, to go, well, I know I'm never going to climb out of the hole now, so I got to do something different. And that might work, of course. You get more aggressive, you might get lucky and it could work, or it could blow yourself a twice as big a hole. And now what do you do? And those holes get so desperately deep that you can't really dig out of them. And so let me ask you
a question here, because this is a perfect segue. I did a show a long time ago, and I still believe in this, right? I still drives a lot of what I do, which is counting the number of wins that I need to get a goal. And if I'm going for, like, you're not going with a goal. You're going to just, smash them in the mouth, right? If I'm going for right. If I'm going for, again, $500 win goal, let's just use a nice little number like that. To win $500, I have lots of ways to do it, right? I could put $3,200 out there and take one hit at $500 and be done in one roll, right? Yep. Or go down $3,200, and now I have to win 6 to get back where I was, right? The whole is relative, right? If I'm looking to win that same $500 with $100 bets, now I've got to win 5. Out of the gate, I got to win 5 to get the goal. And if I lose, I'm losing about a third of what I would have lost with the bigger bets. But now I got to win 16 times, right? You're increasing it. If you're playing that same goal with $25 bets, now you're starting out where you've got to win 25 times just to get there, or 24 times, whatever, just to get to your goal. And if you get whacked, now it becomes 30 and 34 and whatever, right? The hole you dig is relative to the size, of course, of what your spread is, but it's like, I'm always trying to optimize, like how little can I be at this table? Like, I want to be there for 10 minutes and get the fuck out. Like, I don't want to be there for 5 hours if I don't have to be, which is why big bankroll, big bets.
Then you should go 3,200 across and be there for 8 seconds.
Or all day. Right? Or you got to bring.
Well, you're going to be there for 8 seconds. You're going to make 500 or lose $3,000. I mean, in 8 seconds, unless you're going to bring 10 grand with you to try and dig out of the hole again.
Right. Remember the series I did way back? I did. Can I make $100,000 in one roll? And I basically bought in for $3,200, and I put it out there. And every day I rolled the dice one time a day. Like, I walked in and just said, "Put it all back on the table. Put it all back," and I just kept full pressing it. And I dodged the 7 doing that like 26 straight times. Yeah. And won like $150,000. There's no way you can ever pull that off in real life. Yeah, it's so easy. Well, there's no way to do that in real life. And that's why I asked the question, because it's like, in your mind, is there a butter zone to, like, if you have a goal, like, is it to limit the number of times you need to win to get to the goal? Is that the best way? Or is it lower your exposure and know you have to grind for way longer to get there? Like where does the math help you or not help? It never
So,
helps you, but where does the math send you?
yeah, the math is going to tell you. I mean, it's a little more complicated than what I'm about to say in reality, but like a slightly toned down version is it doesn't really make that much difference, right? Whether you have $3,200 exposed for one roll or 1/100th of $3,200 exposed for 100 rolls, you're kind of playing the same game. Now, in
Mm-hmm.
practice, it's going to look a lot lumpier,
Sure.
but if you think about these in terms of like the percentages of what you put out there, it's you're playing the table doesn't know what you're doing. The table's taking, let's just call it 1% to make it easy. The table's taking 1% of your money every time you roll the dice. You want to play that game where you grind it out with 32 across for 5,000 rolls? Fine. It's just going to take a couple of cents every time for 5,000 rolls. You want to play that
Mm-hmm.
game where it's $3,200 one time? Well, they're going to take, what is that? $32 or whatever one time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's sort of so much of my I think so much of why people don't always appreciate my perspective on this kind of stuff is because the reality is often very underwhelming. It's not very exciting. The truth is that
Right.
now it's weird because when you do it in the very lumpy version, where I'm just going to go out there for 3,200 across and cross my fingers and hold my breath and one roll, I'm going to walk away one way or the other. I'm going to have a
Mm-hmm.
massive hole blown in me, or I'm going to have $500. Like it doesn't feel, it's never going to feel like the expected value house edge is rearing its head because the payments are so
Right.
lumpy. And so if you want to smooth those out by lowering your bets down and being a little bit more grindy, I mean, that's fine. I think from a psychological perspective, that's probably more optimal because most people are not really mentally equipped to deal with the volatility of having your swings be 500 or 3,200 at every roll of the dice.
Sure.
That's genuinely exhausting to your brain's risk reward system. The chemical rush that would come from that, the high and then the subsequent low and the drop when you come down from that is really not something that most people are able to deal with. I mean, that's like a little bit more
Right.
serious than you probably expected the answer to be, but I think that's really what it is. That's not a math thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a psychology thing, but those things are sort of interrelated because if you know you're going to take a certain cumulative expected value loss, do you want to put it all in one go or not? I don't know. I think there's actually a really so there was this is a really super nerdy corollary to what I've said before, but for anybody who might be listening who's a hyper nerd like me, you maybe appreciate it. I don't mean to I don't know these people, so I don't know that I'm not trying to plug somebody I know, but there's a YouTube channel called Number File, and they asked the question. They do a bunch of super nerdy stuff, but they've asked one question. They said, if you had to double your money in a casino, what is the best thing that you could do? And they go through all of the mathematics. It turns out your best chance at doubling your money is to flip the coin one time. Play one hand of baccarat, play one pass line in
Put it on
craps.
black. Put it on black.
Exactly. You know,
Right.
that's your best chance. Even if that is that you have a better chance, and now people won't believe this because they don't understand the mathematics of it, but I'm telling you it's true. You are more likely to win by doing one black or red than you are with an 11-step martingale, working your way up to double your bankroll. You're more
Mm-hmm.
likely to lose the 11 steps before you double than you are to win it that first time. So the real mathematical answer is if your only goal is maximize the chance of doubling my money, then you go out, you stick your $3,200 on the pass line or whatever, and hope the first one works out, or don't
Right.
pass, whatever your choice, and hope the first one
Sure.
wins.
Sure.
That's your best chance.
No shit. Okay.
Everything
That's
else
interesting.
is a slow bleed to death. The longer you're there,
Right.
the harder it is to come back.
Well, that
That's
answers my
the real,
question then.
the real.
So that goes back
Yeah.
to what you say. It's not satisfying. It's very satisfying to me. to know that, hey, I was kind of on the right track. Like the less number of times I have to win, I'm better off, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I'm out there at 25, even with the $5,000 bankroll, if I'm out there at $25 bets, I'm going to be here all damn day, and I'm going to feel that house edge. I'm going to feel
Yeah.
that bleed because I have to see 200 rolls to get to where I got to get to, versus only seeing a certain number of rolls. I feel like, and you know this, the longer you're out there, the more the randomness starts to rear its ugly head, right? In those short terms,
Yeah.
you
By
might catch
definition.
a quick variant in like 5 rolls. You know, you could be at a dodge and you catch it right and you're okay. That's interesting. They would say put your money on black on the 50-50 bet. That's
Yeah, or what? Yeah, what? You
yeah,
pick your game of choice. But
it's
yes,
money.
you're better off holding your
Yeah,
breath and trying one time. If your goal is
yeah,
literally double my money, and that's the only thing I care about, what is the
right.
maximum probability of doubling my money? Go play one hand of blackjack or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's your best shot.
Interesting.
That's why. I mean, look,
Yeah,
that's.
yeah,
I personally couldn't deal with the grindy strategies because I wouldn't be. I know myself, and I know I don't have the discipline to stick through. I couldn't do a strategy like your jackalope from this morning, which
yeah.
is okay. I just blew a $750 hole in my bankroll. That's
Yeah.
okay. Let me try and grind out 9 short wins.
Yep.
I couldn't do it. I don't have the discipline, so I'd start doing crazier stuff. And so now I blew one hole in the conservative strategy, and then I switched over to the hyper aggressive strategy, which may work, but obviously is more likely not to work. And now
Mhm.
I've got 10 times the hole, and this all
Right.
sort of falls apart. I just think more people are prone to doing that. I wish people would start lower and then you could still be conservative if you want to, but if you want to be
Mhm.
aggressive, now you can sort of afford to be aggressive, or you have a better chance at being there long enough. I don't know when the big hand is going to happen. I'm just trying to
Right.
be there when it does, right? And if I buy in for
Mhm.
10 grand and do 4,400 inside, well, it better happen right now, And I'd rather
Mhm.
start lower than that and give myself 50
Right.
shots or 25 shots
Well,
at it.
that's the thing, right? It's, do you want many shots? You want to buy a bunch of lottery tickets, a whole book of them, right? Or just have
Yeah.
one crack at it. And that's a goal based thing, right? Like I said, if your goal is to double your bankroll or $500 and you have an absolute, you know, um, legit like solid goal, I can see where that
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's my style of play, generally speaking. But if that's not your goal, then yeah, I can see having a bunch of cracks at it. Like the more cracks you have, the better, the more chance you have of catching the hot roll. But if your strategy doesn't care about a hot roll,
Yeah.
right? If it just doesn't care, like I was talking to David at Casino Quest about this. They had the one called the squeeze play, which I'm not sure if you've seen it, but essentially it's 220 inside. You take one hit and you go to, you grab the 4 and 10 for $35 each. The next hit, you pull it down, you go 160 across, and it's paid for 160 across.
Yeah.
And then you can shoot the moon, right? You're basically playing your way for basically no risk in 2 rolls. John says you just won $160 or $140. Like try that again. Like that to me, that's I'm out.
Yeah.
If my buy-in was 500 and I pulled that off, or if I'm playing short stack, my short stack is 350 and I pulled that move off, I feel like that's pretty good, right? And I that's I guess the you get into the brain, like the dopamine
Well,
thing
I
and the
mean,
rush, right?
the
That's
ugly
like
the ugly truth of this game is that every dollar you leave on the table is expected to not come back to you. All of it anyway, right? So,
Mhm.
in some sense, the greatest crap strategy of all time is to not play the game, right? I mean, like
Sure.
at its limit, that's what's going on. The thing that I find so fascinating is I don't understand. So I don't understand why people have these what feel to me as very arbitrary walk away rules. Like I'm gonna go do X, and if I meet this goal, then I'm finished. I mean that's fine. I mean I
Mhm.
don't begrudge people doing whatever you want, but this idea that somehow I think people have this false sense of security where they go, if I quit now as a win, quote unquote, I met a goal, so I can check the box.
Right.
When I come back tomorrow or the next time or whatever, it's like I'm starting fresh, and I'm going, well, if what you're doing works the way you're acting like it works, why would you leave at all? Just do it. Pretend you left the table. I think one of the first times we ever interacted in the comment section, oh, so many months ago at this point, I said, that's great, man. Just, you were talking about like you would go and then you would go play for a short amount of time and then leave. And I said, okay, but why don't you just, and if you're going to take the actual, literally, like if you're going to pay the gas money to drive to the casino, there's a fixed cost that you incur.
Sure.
If you need to pretend like you left and are starting again, fine, so be it, right? If you literally walk around or if you just pretend, why do you need to wait your second session be the next day? It doesn't make any difference. At the end of the day, you're going to take every role you've been a part of at a craps table, and you're just going to delete all of the times you weren't there, and you're going to create one super, super long string of roles.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference what day it is. Like, I don't want to talk negatively about anybody else, but there is another person who has a channel and is doing a couple of things and has a rule. It's like, well, I won't stay at this table and play more than X number of hands, or after this happens, walk to a new table. And I'm going, I think I roll my eyes at that because it just doesn't make any difference. And look, if you want to have a rule that helps you stay disciplined so you don't go on tilt or something, that's one thing. But this idea of that it matters that I walked away for a second and come back the next day or 5 minutes from now, or if the table next to me, none of that stuff matters. And I kind of believe that we should kind of maybe not put a lot of stock in these sort of.
Yeah, I don't think
that's a superstitious kind of thing.
I hear you. No, I don't think it makes me a Superman to do that, or whatever you would call it. The reason why I had said that, and I still say it to this day. If I go with $1,000 and I win 250, I'm done. I'm typically going to be out of there with my goal. And you're right. And I've heard this, and I've said this myself too. Your life is a string of rolls, right?
Yeah.
30 of them happened here. 26 are going to happen tomorrow. Those same 26 could have happened right after the 30. There's no difference in the string of all that stuff. I think like all of us, I've been bit enough times after a win and given it back. Even playing conservatively, you hit the bat. And like, you know what? I'm just not going to, I worked hard to make the money. I'm going to call a win a win. I'm going to walk away. It feels good to go to the ATM machine and put money back into it. And if I'm in bankroll builder mode, like I'm trying to build the bankroll to keep playing, to go from 1,000 to 1,250 to 1,750 to 5,000 and get to that other level, I feel like I got to deposit money more often and like keep locking it up and locking it up and locking it up in little dribs and drabs versus you're right. Taking the 250, it goes into my pocket like a virtual ATM, restart with $1,000 and try to win 250 a second time. There's no difference in that and going back the next day. And I agree with that. To me, I think, and that's good. I just don't want to tempt fate. I'm like, fuck, I've been burnt so many times. I'm not doing this. I did it. We scored, right? I just had an 18 roller and I made $300 and tap out, baby. Here's your tip, and I'm going home because I don't want to like rub the genie backwards kind of thing. That's how it feels to me. Which is superstitious,
I don't think,
for sure.
I don't even think it's. I think it's disciplined, and I think that's fine. I think, and this is not applied to you, but I think there are people out there that the way they present that it's as if they sort of act as if they have some. They act as if it does matter. They act as if it is kind of. I've got this strategy and it, maybe not literally can't lose, but it's just like such a humongous probability of winner. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this strategy that very nearly can't lose and I'm going to play. And after I make $80, I'm going to walk away. And the next day I'm going to come back and play $8. I'm going, if you've got a strategy that can't lose, you are a fool to leave the table. Mm-hmm. Blackjack players who play an advantage, they are so desperate. They play a game. People who do this perfectly, let's say, there's a very small number of them, but they exist. You are now the casino. Every hand you play, in expectation, you're a winner. So your goal is to play as many times as you can. Right? Why in the world would you take that idea and then walk away from the table? That's so arbitrary to me. And what the reality is because it isn't a can't lose strategy, and it is it does have something else to do with it. And so I just don't like when people, you know, couch it in those terms as if there's some kind of like the reason the strategy works is because I'm going to walk away now. And then when I come back tomorrow, I'm definitely going to win again. It's like, it doesn't, the money doesn't know what's going on. The dice don't know what's going on. They don't know what day of the week it is. Like just,
Right.
And my point back in the day was if you're going to take the time and energy to drive, I mean, even if it's only 30 or 40 minutes to get to your local, gosh, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to pay $20 in gas? And, you know, you should value as an economist, I think you should value your time, even if, you know, you're not literally making money, but your time is valuable. Don't spend 3 hours in the car and $40 in gas to make $75 a day. I think that's a bad trade, even if you could make it.
Yeah. I think if you're going to play that way, you cannot play for 60, $70. I mean, I've given that example, and I put the challenge out. Chris, my friend, did it. I said, go take $100 every day and win 10.
No, right? My answer to that is no.
And the reason why I don't care.
I refuse.
It's not about the 100 or the 10. To me, it's like doing push-ups. It's like you don't get stronger unless you can do 100 push-ups a day. That to me is like an exercising the discipline muscle. Can I physically win less money than it costs me to go there? Because in Philly, he has to pay tolls. He's got to pay the bridge toll, $7 one direction to get to the casino, parking fees to win $10. I'm like, can you do it? Can you physically win $10 every day? Can you win 10%? Yeah. No, he couldn't do it. And the second thing is, do you have the balls to leave? Because it's hard to go, tiny goal, get out of here. And I put it as a challenge, and not that anybody wants to do that, but that was the reason for it. And this is, I guess, going into something else too, which is like, I think you gave me shit about this in the comments one time about you don't like short stack plays, right? I love my short stack stuff because a lot of times I'll set a goal of 250. That's a standard goal for me. I'll bring a grand, look to win 250. And when I hit that, normally I don't hit 250. I'll win 325 or, God forbid 410 or something like that. I will lock the 250. And there's no chance I'm losing today. And then I take the extra 90 or 110 or 140, and then I play with that. So no, I don't just drive 45 minutes, win $250 exactly, and then go home. Right? Yeah. I'm normally in the middle of the hand where I've racked it up. And then I play like little money. And you think I'm an idiot for doing, maybe not an idiot, but you think the short stack play is ludicrous. And I'm like, well,
no.
I love craps, right? I love this game. So to me, now that's a challenge. Now I'm like, can I turn that $106 into $166 and do something that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to challenge myself to give myself a reason to stay, but also not get whipped. So yeah,
who knows? I mean, look, I've said a lot of things in comment sections in my life, so I won't certainly I will not categorically deny that we got into it. I don't recall having a fundamental problem with the fact that look, I do a similar thing. I mean, the levels might be different, but I often will go, I'll draw a line in the sand and go, okay, I don't know when I'm going to stop in a given day, but if I happen to get ahead, I mean, for me, let's say I'm up like $6,000 or something like that. I'm like, oh, cool, that's a nice win, and I'll go, okay, I'm just going to say, look, I'm going to keep playing, but I'm going to say I'm walking with 4,000 as a win, and that I might be gone in 15 more seconds, or if I build up a little more, I might stay a while. And so I'm doing roughly the same thing that you're doing, right? The levels are slightly different, but it's not. The theory is the same. The mentality is the same. It's like, look, it's hard to win. Sometimes it's just nice to book a win. If I've already been playing and I don't know when I'm going to stop. If I don't have a literal time I need to stop, it helps me go, okay, I'll stop if I eat back into this much, and I'm like, okay, I draw the line in the sand. I'll literally put the chips, and I'll tell them, I was like, this is the go home chips right here. I'm not touching those. I hope I make even more, but obviously I probably won't. But if I'm burned through the rest of these for today, then so be it. I mean, so I'd be surprised if I had a problem with that. I think one of the things I used to give you grief about the most was I would like to play at a table with you because of your personality. You seem like a nice guy. Like that part would be nice. But when you get in some of these like 8-move, hybrid strategies, I'd be like, you're driving me crazy, man. Can you just make a bet and leave it? I would lose that's what made me lose my mind.
I do not play that way. I actually, I'll tell you what, The skill,
Like, bro,
the one I did,
just make a
the one I
place bet
did,
or something, man.
yeah, no, that's I typically honestly my play is the horseman. That's what that's my
Yeah,
go-to all the time. It's 3 bets and they resolve or not. If they
yeah,
resolve for me, then they become place bets and I shoot the moon from there. The one I did a couple weeks back, which was skill and luck's strategy, which was the moon bow, had
yeah.
all those moves in it, right? It's
Ugh.
insane all the moves that you make, but hell if it didn't win 6 days in a row. I mean, I think made money
Yeah, I mean,
because of
it
all the
certainly
weird
can.
protections that you've got. It works. It totally works.
Yeah, sometimes.
Hybrid's a way. It's just a way of thinking, right? And it's a somebody I think it was Greg. I forget who said this, but the hybrid is like scared. It's a scared way of playing. Like everything is hedging
I think
everything, and
so.
you're worried about losing. Like you'll risk $600 to not lose 40. So in some cases, right?
Yeah,
And I and
exactly.
I and I understand 2 rolls and I'm good to go, right? And it makes sense in the respect to me of if it's a tool to get me to safety, it's not a way to play like the whole time. Like some people play, $100 don't pass, and they just keep that up and they're using that to hedge every roll from the whole hand.
Yeah.
Versus a smaller don't, huge odds for 1 roll, and then you don't care about the don't pass anymore. It was just there just to kind of put your mind at ease, like the $3,200 across with
Well,
a
we
$10,000 lay 4 or something. That's kind of what you're talking about.
yeah, I mean, we talked about this once before, or maybe detailed comments section exchange. Like, it turns out, I think one of the things I find, again, I don't care what you do with your money, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the people who are devising these, 8-layer hedging combo strategies are are missing the point. Like, if what you are concerned about, so the only reason that you do these hedging type of strategies is because either you literally are not capitalized to withstand a large hole blown in your bankroll, or it would be so psychologically damaging and frustrating or saddening or whatever to you that you just don't want to lose this big don't, or you don't want to
Mm.
lose this big comeback. And I'm going, okay, that's fine. But by the time you put all of these extra pieces to the puzzle out there, what you've done is create a situation where you've reduced your maximum loss to $20. Well, just make a $20 bet then. If $20 is the level that
Mm-hmm.
you are willing to sort of lose on a 1 roll and not be upset or not be undercapitalized to take it, that's fine. The best thing you should do is just make a $20 bet then. Quit. I mean, what is the
Well,
point? It's like,
I think the point is this, and I don't want to speak for Dylan, but I'll try and speak for him because we talked a lot about the strategy. It's not so much that you're worried about losing the $40 or whatever. The goal of the strategy is to be playing at 160 across, or the equivalent of 160 across with the point, um, without risk. And the reason why it's without risk is because,
well, that's impossible.
well, with as little risk as you can, right?
Okay.
And I think let's push this into your world, right? Let's say that I've got 160 across. I want to do it 50 times. How much money do I need to do that? Whatever that number is, $10,000, whatever
Yeah.
whatever that would
$8,000. Yeah.
be, right? To play that 50 times, and I don't have $8,000 to play that 50 times. But if my lay 9 don't pass maneuver works 46 times in a row, then I get to play it 46 times. So it's a way to
Yeah.
kind of get into many bullets without having the bankroll to fund all the bullets. Now you're going to get whacked a few times, which I did when I played that thing. That's the why. The why is I want to try this thing a whole bunch of times, but I can't afford the backing bankroll to put the 160 at risk every time. I think that's the reason that I would categorize why those 2-roll maneuvers make so much sense from those of us who just can't fund the whole thing. And that's what today
Yeah.
is. Like if you can't fund the whole thing, then take your 500 and go to the bubble crafts and play for $1. And let's have the same action. It's still in a cross bet action with a half press move, but you do have 50 cracks at it. And I think
But I
I
think,
think
yeah,
does that make sense how I'm explaining that? Because I think that's
absolutely.
where these guys are coming from, and I can get my head wrapped around it because I can't afford that either. I'd love to play 160 across and press it up. My table max is
Sure.
$500. I can get 160 to 500 in a second, but I can't
Yeah.
afford to go 160 across more than 10 times. So I need
Well, I
something
think
else to save it, I guess.
yeah, so I understand the mentality. I think, and again, I worry that these things come across meaner than I really intend them to. It's not.
They're
I have
not, they're
no
not mean.
animosity at all. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, some people have already made their mind up about me, and that's okay. But
sure.
uh, and so I don't want to give them. I don't want to cement their prior opinions of me. I'd like people to understand I'm actually a pretty reasonable guy when it comes to this stuff. The the security that you get or you feel like you're getting from a strategy like that. And I don't remember off the top of my head every single one of
Sure.
the movements in the Moonbow, but I remember I watched it. I watched you do them all. It's not real security. It feels secure. Like
Hmm.
I think, and this is like a very fundamental thing, and this is not literally applicable to the Moonbow itself, but this is the mentality. There is a mentality in the craps community amongst many strategists that if you lose a bet less often, then it is a better bet. And that is not that is to me, the way I look at the world, that is doesn't make any sense. If I'm going to lose
Okay.
$300 by laying the 9, that is somehow better than well, maybe I should have thought the numbers in my head more
Well,
specifically.
I had those
Laying the
philosophies.
6 and losing more
Yeah.
often doesn't make it better or worse because these things are to lose more money less often is equivalent if the numbers work out right
Hmm.
to losing less money more often. And so all you're doing is
Right.
saying I've moved the hole. If it's a don't based strategy, like your hole is like come out 7s and 11s, for example,
Hmm.
and you go, wow, I really don't like the hole being blasted in my strategy. What is that? 6, 7, 8, 8/36 of the time or whatever, right? Six
Yep.
times you roll a 7, 2 times you roll an 11. So you go, well, what is there something I can do to move that? And like, I hate losing the $100 on the don't, on the come out. So what if I lay the 9 for 150? That's going to make me 100. Okay, what if I lay the 5 and the 9 for 150? That's going to make me, I'll pay my don't pass bet and I'll make 100 on top of that. Cool. Okay, you're now going to lose 150, a little less often than you're going to lose 100 or whatever it is. I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
but in expectation, you're doing that. You're not changing anything. It's fake security. And so, and again, how that applies specifically to the Moonbow is, I don't remember, but like just in general, I'm trying to speak about these types of strategies. It's, I don't understand why people look at only the probability of something happening. I can't tell you how many times I've watched people say, I really like the lay the 4 bet. It's a good bet, but laying the 5 is not as good. And I'm going, well, that doesn't make any sense. Laying the, I mean, that maybe they're fine. I mean, they're fine. I'm not saying either one of them is amazing or a terrible bet or anything like that. Like losing 200 on the 4 a little less often versus losing 150 on the 5 basically is a wash, close enough to a wash. What are you talking about? Like you there's probably a way to devise a strategy that can only lose on even more extreme outcomes, but that doesn't, if you have to lose more money when that happens, when you play this thing 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times, you wind up in exactly the same place. So this maneuvering around is, if you want to do it for fun, fine, but I feel like some people are doing it because they think they're on to some way to actually make their lives easier to be able to get 160 across more often.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm telling you that that's not what happens in reality.
So
You
what?
might
So what
make
is
it
the?
such that,
Good.
no, go ahead.
I was going
No,
to
go
ask you.
ahead.
So what's? So what is the? So I hear what you're saying. If I have 150 on the 9, on a lay 9, and I lose it 4 times, versus losing the 6 or on the come out 6 times. What's the actual benefit there? Right? Isn't the
Nothing.
exact same? Except for you got the
Yeah.
vig, right? There's no real difference there. I think what Skill did is he laid the 9 for
You get to
more.
pay a little bit extra to choose your number in some sense, but like let's
Essentially,
again, now
you're
Vigs
buying
are
a
real, but
don't.
let's throw them
Yeah.
away.
but you're buying it down.
Like
So you're
let's
buying down the risk for you're taking two ways to lose away, essentially. But over time, they will work themselves out. That's kind of what you're saying. It
yeah,
doesn't really matter.
you're taking two ways to lose away, but making when your loss happens, you makes more money.
Mm-hmm.
Same with going from the five. So I want to lose. Let's say I want to lay the. I'm deciding between laying the 9 and laying the 10. I'm going to pick one of them, and I want to win $100 when I win the bets. So I've got to lay 150 on the 9 or 200 on the 10. Well, 4 9s and 3 10s turns out to be $600 a piece. What difference does it make? To me, those are, by all intents and purposes, slight vague rounding errors aside, those are
Sure.
equivalent decisions to me. Neither one of them is better or worse than the other. It's just a matter of preference. And I think sometimes people, I think it's a misunderstanding. I'm not saying the people that devise the strategy necessarily misunderstand, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't pay attention. The reason that casinos can get away with hot bets paying such absurdly, house edge heavy amounts is because people see a bet pay a large amount and think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people who are more literate about these things know that some of those hot bets are the worst things you can do, but new people or people who are not informed about this stuff, they see 15 to 1, that's a big return on my money. Well,
Yeah.
15 to 1, if it's only going to happen one out of every 18 times, is a horrible outcome. That is a bad bet by
Mm-hmm.
almost any measure. Well, some of these other things, like you shifting which number you're going to win or lose on and losing more money less often, it doesn't change how good or bad it is. It's the same problem in reverse. And so that's where I start to try, and I don't want to say take exception, but I want to try and
Sure.
inform people a little
I
about
think,
that. Like,
and I, and I think this goes back to the idea that you play a lifetime of roles in many small segments,
yeah,
and I think people have gotten crushed by multiple come out sevens, and they're like, I can't live with that anymore. The
yeah,
nine's not going to get me twice, right? It can't get you
sure.
twice in a row, right? Unless it does, all right. Unless John's throwing. That's the mentality.
Yeah,
It's like, God, I just don't want to get beat by all the come out sevens, and I get the hedge on
yeah,
that. That's where like
yeah.
the mental state of that play. I go, I totally understand because I played the don't most of my life, and it sucks getting your butt kicked down there on a good shooter, right?
It's all the same, man. If you ask
Yeah.
somebody, so works, the entire world of finance works like this. Nobody ever sold you insurance that was fair. But you buy insurance because you don't want to deal with either the literal cost or maybe the mental things that come along with. Look, nobody. The best case scenario in your life is you buy car insurance but never need it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are paying. Somebody put together a very complicated um, collection of averages, and they hired some sort of actuary to figure it out to determine what you need to pay for your car insurance. And they figured out what is the average amount that I can expect to pay out from this person over their lifetime, and then tack on a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Right.
Every single bet in the casino is exactly the same way. They say, if we were playing fair, what would I have to do? And then just take a little bit off the top.
Right.
And so every hedge you do, every insurance bet you do, you are paying too much to insure these things. I'm not saying that it's necessarily always bad to have some sort of protective thing out there, but to do this in a way like you, it's always done to preserve like an arbitrary time frame. I don't want to lose 3 sevens in a row, or I want to be able to last a little bit longer today. And I'm like, when you zoom out, if you are a regular player of the game, when you zoom out, none of that, you're not going to be able to tell any of these things, right? When you take a look at all of your roles together, this goes back to this idea, and maybe this is something you wanted to touch on too. It's connected to this idea of these strategies that trigger. And it's
Mm-hmm.
connected to this idea of like, well, if I say I'm going to wait to roll a 5, then turn my bets on, and then wait for a box hit and go back off, the only way I can lose is if I go 5, then 7. And the combination 5, 7 back to back only happens whatever you said it was 3% of the time or
3.5%.
whatever it was, 3.5% of the time. So I'm only going to lose 3.5% of the time. And that's not the right way to look at it. Because if all you're trying to do is minimize the percentage that you lose, why not wait for 6 5s in a row and then turn your bets on? Because guess how hard it is to roll 6 5s and then a 7? That's a really small number. What happens is the reason that it feels like you're losing slower is because you're not playing half the time.
Right.
That's all it is.
Yeah,
right?
I think
if you want to last
that when I was playing it, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to last at the table, the number one thing I could tell you is don't put any money on it. You'll last forever. And so this idea that these things are, I think that's a misunderstanding of or misapplication of probabilities. Like it feels like you're almost doing it, but
that's a fallacy thing. So that's an interesting point, right? So the fallacy is blah, 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 blah has happened. Therefore, this bet's going to be good.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of strategies out there that live on that principle. Given
and that's all
X number of given X number of whatever's, you're not going to see a thing. And I try to explain it like this to people, and I don't know that I'm explaining it correctly, and I said this on that one roll, right? If the chances of rolling a 5 followed immediately by a 7 is at 3.5%, and my bet is saying, I bet you can't do that ahead of time. That's when I'm facing the 3.5%. But once the 5 rolls, all that goes all out the window. And now I'm looking at 16%, that 7's coming. Doesn't matter that the 5 just happened, right? The math works either way. I did the math. It works both ways. You can look at it ahead of time and say, yep, that's what it's going to be, 3.5%. And then you roll it out and you go, oh, look at that. I lost 4 times out of 100. Like it always works. But it's in the rear view or out the front window that you're looking at what's about to happen. And so you're saying, you can calculate the ahead of it, right? You can look ahead and say, 4 4s. Then you got to start laying something. Like lay the 4. If you can see 4 4s before a 7, start laying the 4 because the 7's due over the 4. Where do you land on that?
That is it doesn't make any difference. The nature of the if we can at least for now assume that the actual outcomes follow the random distribution, right? Let's just pretend even if I believe that's true no matter what, but some people would argue, let's just pretend for the sake of simplicity that's what we're dealing with. What you're dealing with is something called conditional probabilities. So a conditional probability is what is the probability that X happens given that Y has already happened, right? Mm-hmm. A random process like dice rolls, when we say dice rolls are independent, right, or they don't matter, one doesn't affect the next one, right? There's nothing about the roll that I just did that has any impact on what I'm about to do next, right? That's what independence means. That means that these conditional probabilities are irrelevant. There is no such thing as what is the probability of rolling a 7 given that I just rolled a 5 is 1 in 6. The probability that I'm going to roll a 7 given that I just rolled 2 5s is also 1 in 6. People want to believe that's the fallacy comes from calculating the probability of a string of things happening. Mm-hmm. The probability of, let's say, I don't know, 4 4s in a row is really, really small. The probability of rolling a 4, given that you've already rolled 3 of them, is just the probability of rolling a 4 or whatever, 1 in 12 or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, the casino won't let you bet that. That's what I was trying to explain to somebody else. Like you can't. It's great that rolling a 4 4s in a row is impossible statistically, right? It's like a point whatever percent.
It's 1/12 to the 4th power, whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
It's
right?
a small
super
number.
Tiny, right? So the casino will not let you bet it though. Here's a buck at 1,000 to 1 that's not going to happen. Like you can't make that bet. You can't make the bet. So the calculation to me is irrelevant. It's good to know, but since I can't make the bet that's going to pay based on that probability of happening, you're stuck with every single roll. It's a 1 in 6, and that's
so when you do
the whole memory
that's exactly right,
thing, right? And that's the reality of it is that, and I know I sometimes talk around that with when I say the chance of XYZ happening, because you'd almost never see it, like. like,
Of course.
physically you don't ever see that. That's why it feels like it's a safe way to think about it. But the math, like I said, the math, I always say that, the math behind or ahead of the event is what that is. But you can't bet on that. And the fact that you can't drop a bet out there that says, I bet you, casino, $10 against 100 that I can't roll a 5 followed by a 7.
Exactly. And if
They
you
won't take-
could,
Yeah.
if you could, they'd find out what they would do is they'd go, well, that happens 3.7% of the time.
That's right.
And that's, 28 to 1. So I'm going to pay you 24 to 1 on that bet. And that's what they would do.
Right. 100%.
Right. That's how it would work if they, exactly. That's how all the other bets are done.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yep.
It is. I do sometimes get extra vigilant, let's say, when people have these. I like to wait for 5 no field rolls before I martingale the field or whatever. And it's like none of it until you have $1 on the table. None of it matters. You can lay whatever numbers you want to and trigger however you want, but nothing matters. It doesn't matter that it is hard to roll a 5 then a 7. The only thing that matters is once my 750 across is live, that 750 is only exposed. It doesn't matter what I flipped a switch to make it exposed. It is now exposed. So the only thing that matters is what are the possibilities that can happen right now, and that people think of it as, well, what are the odds that if I go back 2 rolls that I got this particular sequence? Okay, that is 3.7%. Okay, that's fine. None of that matters. What is the probability that I lose $750 given conditional on the fact that I just rolled a 5? It's exactly the same as if I rolled a 4 or a 12 or the dice fell off the table or I just showed up. It doesn't make any difference. And that's the thing that's the thing you have to do.
Yeah.
So
totally.
You're going to lose only 3.5% or 3.7% of the time, but that's because you're almost never playing. Right? The non-trigger rolls.
That's such a good,
non-trigger roll. That's where all of that that's why it feels like, now quite literally, you are losing less often because most of the time you're not exposed at all. So, the other 97% of the time you're not winning, right? You're just not in the game.
You know how easy it is to fall into the trap? I'm telling you, I'm out there in the garage and I'm freezing my ass off, right? And like I think this morning or yesterday, I had triggered, so the cross bets were on, like that. I waited, finally got a 9, cross bets go on. And I looked at the computer and I'm like, shit, I'm on roll like 19 now. I haven't seen the 7 and 19. The fucking 7's coming. Yeah. It's coming. And I'm like, I almost said out loud, I'm turning my bets off because I'm scared of the 7. And I'm like, no, don't say it out loud. A, it's superstition to say it out loud. But B, it's like you're totally selling the whole fallacy thing. Like it's 7 ain't due. It feels like it's due, because you haven't seen it in a while, but it doesn't freaking matter, right? Ultimately, it's going to come when it comes. That's why I practice, so I can make the 7 come 1 every 7 times instead of 1 every 6 times.
You let me know when you get there.
How do you feel about that?
We're going to make some money. We're going to make some money together.
I know.
If you can ever pull that off.
Yeah.
What
I'm
if you want to do
the
dude?
Go ahead.
No, if you want, you're a coder, so if you want to do if you want to see what it's like to have a number be due, take your 10,000 rolls or 5,000 rolls or whatever, and say, okay, calculate the conditional probabilities. Say, what are the odds of a 7? How many times does a 7 come after there's been 1 no 7? Right?
Okay.
How many times has there been a 7 come after 2 no 7? So for every time there's 2 numbers that are non-7, take the third number and calculate all the third numbers that ever happened and however many of them are 7s. Do that for 2 rolls, 3 rolls, 10 rolls, 15 rolls. There will be fewer times when you have a series of 15, which is why you need a bunch of rolls to be able to do this a bunch. Sure. But just start looking at it. It's never going to be exactly perfectly 1/6, but you're going to be surprised by how flat that bar chart is. That histogram is going to show you that basically, because what that is telling you is what are the probabilities of a 7 on the next roll. If there's a thing that's due, then all of a sudden, once you get to some critical mass, 9 rolls, 10 rolls, 11 rolls, whatever your number is, you're going to start throwing a 7 25% of the time, 30% of the time.
Mm.
I promise you that's not going to happen. You're just going to have a really small number of data points that have 25 no 7s and then a 7 because you're only going to get to 25 rolls a handful of times because that's a rare thing. But I promise you that something very close to 1/6 of the 26th rolls in a sequence is a 7.
Mm-hmm.
There's no due-ness in it. You can test the due-ness in the data, right? What is the probability of rolling You can do it the other way too. What is the probability of rolling a 7 given that you just rolled 2 of them in a row? Mm-hmm. Go find all the sequences of 2 7s and then calculate what percentage of those is there a third 7. It's going to be really close to 1/6.
I like that. That's actually because I'm tracking other things like distances between numbers and roll lengths and box number hits, but I haven't looked at that. I've seen like the number of times I get 1, 2, 3, 4 non-7s. You know, the percentage of all the rolls that are 3 non-7s, but I haven't broken it down to that level. I got to do that. That's actually super interesting because that'll actually tell
that'll tell you everything you need to know about due. How due is the 7 versus not due, or how many times, because people have these. I've seen there's one, I don't remember the details now, but there's one strategy that is like, it's basically I wait for 2 7s consecutively and then put a massive across bet out there. And the person that came up with that strategy, one of the people that was promoting it, they said, well, the reason is the odds of rolling 3 7s in a row are whatever 1/6 to the third power is like what, 30, 1 in 216, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Who cares? The probability that you lose your place bets is 1 in 6. I don't care. I don't care if it's 85 7s in a row, right? I guess maybe 85, we'd start to question the dice or something, but like assuming like everything is square, it's such a misapplication. It's the kind of thing that's like just enough knowledge, like a little knowledge is a very dangerous thing. And I think it's sort of born. I respect the fact that these people are at least trying to think a little bit about the mathematics of the game and trying to apply some sort of probabilistic nature. But one of the first things you learn when you learn about behavioral biases and sort of things that filter their way into probabilities are these kind of fallacies, right? Most of them, come from, that's where martingales were sort of born out of, this idea that this thing can't keep happening. And I should look at it as, you know how hard it is to lose 9 blackjack hands in a row? Yeah, it's pretty hard. I agree. I agree that it's hard. It doesn't happen very much. That's the point. The point is, it's basically a coin flip after you've lost 8 in a row. You're not dealing with, 9 in a row is, 1/10 of 1%. That doesn't matter. You've already gone 90% of the way down this path. Like the odds of making the next turn wrong are like 50-50, buddy. Like, yeah, if you ask me, like you said, if I wanted to make the bet at the beginning that I'm going to play and I won't lose the next 9 hands, the casino would be like, okay, put $1,000 down, and if you don't lose the next 9 hands, I'll give you $1.50.
Right.
You could do. I mean, we could come up with the right way to do it.
Sure.
It would be exactly. You would never be able to convince people of this, but it would be identical to martingaling in the first place. Like I'm betting that I'm not going to lose.
This is like the guy that bet $2 million or $1.4 million at halftime of that game that was 32-0 or whatever it was in football.
The Charger game or whatever.
Yeah, it was 28-0 at halftime. Yeah, he bet 1.4 mil to win like $10,000. The exact thing you're talking about. It can't never happen.
Exactly. I would love to be in a room full of people who are doing 10-step martingales, laughing at that guy. Like, guys, you are look in the mirror, man. Like it's the same thing.
The martingale thing is interesting because it's a system that works when it works, right? But like me as a paycheck player or paycheck protagonist or whatever you want to call me, right? Proponent. I can win $500 10 days in a row, $5,000, and then I can lose $5K in one sitting, and I'm even, right? The martingale is the same thing, where if you play it and you win your unit, you lose 50 when it gets to level 9. The one time it gets there, it blows everything away. And therein lies the problem with it. That's why you have to, I think, build in like we talked about earlier, some other stuff. If you
Maybe
don't
I
have a
meant
home,
I
if
hinted
there's
at
no home
this. I
run,
hinted at
you can't
this.
get back to it, right?
Yeah, I hinted the last time that we said it. Do you have time for me to tell the story about the martingale?
Go for it. Oh, please do. Now we're not talking about it. Go for it.
All right.
Yeah.
I hinted about it a little bit last time. I'll tell the more detailed story. Some of the story is going to sound made up. I swear to you that everything I'm about to tell you is true. I used to play a bunch in Louisiana, and there was a really nice guy. He was very quiet. He never said much of anything. And in Louisiana, the tables that I played at had $5 minimums and $10,000 maximums, and triple pay 12s in the field. So if you're going to do a martingale on a craps table in the field, that's about as good the conditions you could hope for. The guy would come in, he would buy in for something like $21,000 or whatever, and he put $5 in the field. It was the first time you saw it happen, it was the craziest thing you'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Never seen somebody with more discipline in my life. And I don't know what his win goal was. I saw him many times. It was probably something around maybe $200 or something like that, and he'd cash out and go home. And so in the field back then, you could do 5, 10, 20, 40, 80, 160, 320, 640, 1280, 2560, 5120. That's 11. The 12th one wouldn't get you all the way back. So you could do 11 or 12. And you also had the chance to hit a 2 or a 12 along the way and like get lucky and sort of double your money and do better than average, right? Which I had seen a couple of times. So this guy, and he's telling people, he would always have a bunch of money from him. So people will constantly think like, oh, I'm going to do whatever you're doing. And he'd be like, they ask him what he was doing. The only time I ever heard him talk, he was explaining to some lady who was asking him what he was doing. He basically said, he goes, I can't lose. And I'm like, well, that's a dangerous thing. So he comes in one day, like he does every time, buys in for 20-something thousand bucks, sticks $5 in the field. He's up and down and going back and forth and back and forth. And lo and behold, boom, we get 12 straight non-field rolls. So he goes broke. Quietly, doesn't say a word. He walks back out of the casino. He comes back 30 minutes later, 40 minutes later. He buys in for another 20-something thousand in cash. I remember this so vividly because we had like he just throws his money down in the middle of the roll. And it takes, 15 minutes to count it all because it's a ton, they only count it 2,000 at a time or whatever. So it's taking forever to cut it out. And I swear to you on everything, he starts right back at $5 and the next 12 rolls are non-fields. He busts his bankroll again, starting with the first sequence. So he's now, this is the thing. He is in the hole something like 42 to 44,000 bucks, somewhere in that range. So let's think about this. So that's the moral of the story is, yeah, you can lose. Not only that, you can lose twice. Honestly, for him, although he was missing for a period of time, he consecutively lost bankrolls. If you take, again, we talk about zooming out and look at his life as a series of rolls, he just went bust 2 times in a row. That's the odds of that happening are incredibly small. But here's the thing. So let's go. So now let's think about it. Now he's in a $40,000 hole. He has to win in $5 units, right? So he has to win, let's call it, about 9,000 units. He has to win about 9,000 units. Okay, let's think about it this way. All right. Okay, so you're playing at a table that is rolling the dice, let's say every 30 seconds. So let's say you're getting 2 rolls a minute. Well, you're going to, on the field, it's close enough to 50-50. You will get a resolution one way or another every 2 roll. Like you get a resolution every roll, but you're going to win on average once every 2 rolls, right? Approximately. So he needs 16,000 rolls or 18,000 rolls to get out of the hole. How long is it going to take him to do 18,000 rolls in these table conditions? Well, it's going to take him, if he's doing 2 rolls a minute, it's going to take him 9,000 minutes. What is that? 1,500 hours?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? I've never seen him play more than 4 or 5 hours. He plays 5. If he plays 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's going to take him 10, 20, 30, about 35 weeks. If he plays 5 hours a day, 7 days a week for 35 straight weeks and nothing bad happens, then he gets to dig himself out of the hole.
Damn.
You want to talk about a grind? I never saw him again after that day. My guess is he had enough money to go bust once, but probably couldn't afford to go bust twice. And I say that not in judgment, but in just that's the
Sure.
practicality of it all. $45,000 is a lot of money, and so he's doing the thing. So what these Martin, what I, that's an extreme case. What is not an extreme case though is 12 consecutive non-fields happening. I don't know, once a week.
Yeah.
I don't know the prevalence of it, but it's a thing that is going to happen pretty regularly in the grand scheme of it all,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you play long enough, and that's what I mean. You play these hyper that what he's doing. It doesn't feel like I just bet on the Chargers up 28-0 at halftime. It doesn't feel that way, but that's exactly what he's doing. If it all works out, he's going to grind out these tiny, tiny little wins, and so he's going to make $500 a week, which is, I mean, that's fine. Make your extra, $30,000 a year as side income if you think that's. I mean, but he just lost 45 in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
These these holes are asymmetric. These martingales, these strategies that ladder, they don't lose most of the time. The problem is when they lose, it's so catastrophic. You cannot recover. You literally can. I mean, that's the way the math works. Is like
Right.
the house edge is going to find you one way or another. And if you've been lucky enough to not have to not have that happen, that's fine. Plenty of people. There are plenty of people who do martingale things like that, and we're lucky enough not to have that happen. What I could do the math, but not off the top of my head. The odds of you losing 12 in a row for any given starting point is very, very, very small. Whatever is basically one half to the 12th power or whatever. But the cumulative odds of that happening at least once over the course of 20 hours of play, all of a sudden now you're a 50-50 proposition to go bust once over 20 hours. And it's going to turn out that you can't make 20 grand in 20 hours in this strategy. So on average, you're still going to lose. Like, it's just, I don't know. We've got off this trail on martingales, and I felt like I kind of hinted at that story before.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to use it as like a caveat. Like this I'm going to use as the basis of my strategy, my professional gambling career, whatever. If you're just going to use a flat martingale strategy, you need to understand that if you, by definition, you're going to bust it if you do it long enough. You're going to have to be really, really, really lucky to not bust it. People look at it the other way. They think, I have to be really unlucky to bust. And that's true for every sequence that you start. But that's not true for cumulative, right? Like, if you want to like put 1,000, white beans in a bag and put one black one in there and draw one out, it's really hard to draw that black one. But if I said, okay, put it back and play that game 5,000 times, all of a sudden you're a favorite to draw it at least once, right? And that's a thing that nobody really wants to think about. And because we can hide in the rare events and we can say, like, look, the math is one, 50-50 proposition 9 times in a row is really unlikely. But it's like, the game you're playing is let me try and do 10,000 sequences and not have one of them hurt me 9 in a row. That's a different question. Mm-hmm. And that guy found out that in a really nasty way. The actual odds of losing 2 bankrolls in a row in like he did are astronomically small, unbelievably small. He got excessively unlucky. But if he had never had one of those happen before, he was, again, not due, but he's sort of tempting fate at that point. And that's all those things are. And so, I don't know. I don't think the average person who's trying to utilize them fully understands that you can't look at the individual string math. You have to look at the cumulative probability of busting once or twice over a bunch of tries. And that all of a sudden starts to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, right. Now I'm flipping a coin. And where I win, a small amount, or I lose, 20 grand or 10 grand or whatever it is. So maybe I shouldn't flip this coin. Like that's
the discussion we had earlier. That was like my win, goal, and go home discussion. Like, it doesn't matter that I went home. because the next time
Yeah.
I go, it's going to be the next in my cumulative string of events is going to be what
Yeah.
happens the next time I show up. But I think, yeah, that's you're nailing the head right there.
Your
That
most
really explains
profitable,
that. Yeah.
yeah, your most profitable and your highest percent probability winners in your daily paychecks. It may be that some of those, I mean, I could figure it out if I had to, but it may be that some of those are likely to win 80 or 90% of the time.
Hmm?
But what are the odds of winning something that takes 90% of the odds of winning something that is 90% likely to win twice in a row is 81. The odds of doing it 3 times in a row is 72. The odds of doing it 4 times in a row, 63. 5 times, 54. So the odds of doing that thing correctly 6 times in a row, all of a sudden, now you're a favorite to lose 1.
Mm-hmm.
And if the losses are 8 times as big as the wins, well, there you have it.
Right. That's a
You
good,
know,
yeah.
I lose
And
I lose 1 out of every 6, but I lose 8 times as much as I win. I'm in the hole at the end of all of this. Some of
yep.
it's not. I think it's. I say this not to critique the illustration of it, but like just to try and give people a full understanding of
Mm-hmm.
whether the strategy wins all 5 days on the daily paycheck or not is maybe sometimes instructive because you can see kind of how it works and some of the things that can. I think that's all
Right.
valuable information.
Sure.
But even if the strategy, and there are plenty of strategies that are going to win a vast majority of the time, but you keep playing, you keep going back to the well over and over and over again, you are now suddenly at some point a massive favorite to lose once or twice over a period of time. And so what matters is how big are the wins relative to the losses. If I'm going to win 100 bucks 90% of the time, but lose $1,000 when I lose, 9 100s and 1 minus 1,000, I've lost $100. That's
Right.
how they all. That's how they all are in practice. Whether that happens over a course of 5 rolls or 10 days or whatever
Right.
is going to be noisy. Move around and
That's
have its own
that
thing.
is that is the paycheck problem. That's what happened. So
Yeah,
when Chris went and took $100 to the casino to win $10, he lost twice. And he
yeah,
won $10 every day, but twice. And he ended up, I think, winning or losing $99 was his end game.
yeah,
In a whole
yeah,
month, I think he won $99. And I'm like, yeah, it was a total waste of time. I'm like, no shit. Right. But that's
yeah,
the thing. When the losses are so big, you can't come back from it. And that's
yeah.
why I said earlier, like if I'm doing a paycheck thing for real, if I ever do that for real, it can't just be 500 and out. It's got to be
It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt my
500.
heart if you do that for real.
It's got to be 500 and some home run action. You got to have the home runs to make
Yeah,
up. You can't just do the 500 every day. I know part of this thing, and people get mad at me, and I'm like, can you not just enjoy the science experiment that this is? Like everybody says, my
yeah,
strategy is going to work. This one's going to, you should do this. Like, it doesn't matter what I do out there. Like I've got 4 that have won six in a row. They're undefeated. And when
yeah.
I roll them for 30 days the next time, we're going to lose $5,000 at least once in all of them. And the point of
Well,
this
when you
is
stick them all in win craps, we're going to see what they all do over the
they
course of
all
a super long term.
they all lose. Everyone
Of
goes
course
to
they do.
zero, right? Now, if you run a win craps in a string, right? Never you let it go to 0 and stuff. They all go to 0. If you do the paycheck thing, you will see the horseman, the come ladder, 96% win rate,
Yeah,
right? But again, 4 out of 100 times is 20K
yeah,
that goes away,
yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
like, yeah, 96 win rate sounds great. 80% sounds awesome, but the 20% that you're losing, you're getting thumped. So a strategy like that does not have a home run feature added to it, where you can make up, like we said before, those losses. Or if you're not going to play home run style, sometimes you're just going to be a lifelong loser. Like so,
Well, what's
paycheck play
funny
is
about
great and
this
cool, but good.
there's some sort of like I think like the connective tissue of the themes of what we've talked about today is that we talked about this idea in terms of individual bets where it's like you can't look at how often you win the lay 4. I win the lay 4 more often than the lay 5. Yes, but when you lose more as well. So I lose more less frequently. That's kind of a wash. That same concept that people misunderstand applies to these strategies. I'm going to win the horseman 96% of the time. Okay, that's fine. I don't even dispute that. If that's how it works out, that's how it works
Mhm.
out. I'm not surprised by these numbers. You can find strategies that win 99% of the time.
Mhm.
But when they lose 105 times as much as they win. So you end up in I very rarely lose a ton of money is not any different in the long term as I very often lose a tiny amount of money. These things are
Right.
identical
It's
and
all
you
the
put them
same.
in the
Yeah,
wash.
totally. Yep.
You can run the win
It's
craps
that
for the
pain.
98% win and the 2% win, and this cumulative bankroll at the end of it all is going to be basically the same. And it's like you just get to choose which version, which one is more fun for you to play. That's the only thing you should be deciding. Like it ultimately doesn't really make much difference, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, try and convince that to somebody you can't convince somebody of that who has played a strategy 15 times and never lost. I don't know
True.
why they don't believe you, but it's just a psychological barrier. They are
Mm-hmm.
unwilling to entertain the idea. I think the reason is they sort of creating in their mind the truth. And I mean, this part is true. If you play 15 straight times and win, the loss rate is zero in their mind. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I agree that your experience has been zero losses. I don't dispute that. There are plenty of people there may be people that are, up way more than that. You happen to be in one of these really lucky outcomes. Just keep at it. Eventually, you're going to get to experience all of them. And when you get done with all of them in the wash, you're going to be behind. That's
Mm-hmm.
just how. There's nothing you can do about
Yeah.
that. I don't know why that's such a controversial thing. When you say that to people,
It
they get really upset with you. But
it shouldn't be controversial, and that's why I think the paycheck series is so damn good. It's like my favorite thing because you get to experience every peak and valley of these, even in 5 days.
yeah,
Look at the highs and lows I've experienced in the 5 days with every strategy. It's like there's some days I'm like, this thing is unbeatable. I walk out there some mornings and it's 4 rolls and I'm like, I made $1,000. I'm going to get some coffee. And some days, like
right.
96 rolls into it, I'm flailing around like and you can see that it's over the course of time they will all be at the same, probably about the same place.
Very
And
close. Yeah,
to me, it's a good experiment. It's fun to see, and I think for people to see that this sequence of rolls, which might seem really good, isn't that great. And what it really looks like over time. And I think finding where the pitfalls are is the fun part to me. I know I swear a lot out there. And I get really mad when I lose. I really want to win every day, which is probably a good quality. But at the end of the day, I love that science experiment. It's like, where is this thing going to get beat? What is the thing that's going to make me pucker up a little bit when it happens?
yeah,
And every strategy's got a different one, and it's I think it's fascinating to watch them play over time. And
yeah.
the 15-0, the 35-0, whatever that, whatever it is, and the one's going to come. And if I limit the win goal too small, it hurts too bad. Like I've been in win craps, and I'm saying, well, what if we went from a 10% win goal with 100% stop loss to 6% win goal and a 90% stop loss, and start
Right.
monkeying around with those things, and saying my actual paycheck is $500 a day, but if I change the win goal to an 11% win, then I'm actually making 550, whatever it is. I'm getting a little bit extra juice every day, and I'm not quite getting my ass kicked as much. And there's a butter zone in there somewhere. What that is,
Yeah.
which the math will probably tell me later on that doesn't matter. Ultimately, you're still gonna
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to spoil it
it's
for
gonna
you,
it's gonna equalize. But I think that's the fun part, though, right? Because I think everybody in chat, everybody says you got to try this win rate, net loss goal, whatever. I
sure.
guarantee you, when I do the same strategy against the same set of rolls with altering the win goal and the loss limit till they get to here, we're going to lose about the same amount of money the whole time. It's not going to matter.
Yeah. The question is just, do you want to, clinch up with half the effort 100% of the time, or do you want to clinch up with twice the effort for 50% of the time? What difference does it
Mm,
make?
right.
It's hard.
Well,
I sound so cold when I say this, but I can't. Those are literally the same thing to me.
mm,
That you tell me I'm
it's
going to
it,
win, I'm
it's a
going to
comfort
lose
zone.
$300, this often versus 250. I'm going to go. I
Doesn't
literally
matter.
don't care between the two. What I mean,
Right.
those are equivalent. There's no difference to me. And
Mm,
the win goals will change. It will change how often you win. It will change you can make it so that you lose less than $5,000, a 90% loss rate or whatever. But if you lose, it's gonna turn out, just trust me on this, it's gonna turn out that you lose less, but you get to the threshold more often, right? Obviously, right? Because
Right.
it's closer to you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so you're
and
gonna lose.
that's what you find. Well, what also you find, and you know this, is you're going to have less outcomes. So when I did this experiment on one of the strategies, I did it by myself. You find that, okay, great, 500 win, 5,000 loss. In whatever 10,000 rolls, there's 640 whatever it was resolutions, right? So I won 580
Yeah.
times, whatever, right? When I move the win goal up, and the loss limit goes with it a little bit, you limit the number of resolutions. Now you're at 500 times. You get an outcome because you stretched everything
Yeah.
out, and it's
Yeah.
harder to get to the win goal, so you have less of them. And you find that the little chart thing goes for way longer, like an extra 75 rolls.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so now I'm burning up more rolls out of the 10,000 to get. That's why it doesn't work out.
You
And you
could
can
set a
watch
loss
that. You
limit
can watch
at
that.
you could set a loss limit at $5 and a profit limit at 100 and run the thing, and you'd still lose
Mhm.
exactly the same amount of money. You'd be
Mhm.
losing almost every time, but they'd be very, very, very small losses. And you'd find out, well, oh, if I run $5 loss limit, $100 win goal, I lose, 99.9% of the time or whatever. But okay, but I never lose more than $5. Like you can frame. It's called framing. You could change the way that you ask the question in all sorts of
Mhm.
ways, and that's what most people are doing without realizing it. Is they're just taking the same inputs and shifting them around in a way that makes them feel more comfortable, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. Just please don't like broadcast to the world. I'm not taking to you, just in general,
Sure.
don't broadcast to the world that you've got some magic system now. That's all. That's all I ask. Like the only reason I ever pop my head in and get annoyed is like when people start to go, well, I've figured it out. I've cracked the code. Just do it exactly this way. I was like, no, you've taken the inputs and changed them a little bit. You've shifted it around in a way that maybe makes the game more fun to you or more palatable for your psychology. That's fine. That's great. We all have our different preferences. There's nothing wrong with that. But you didn't solve anything, right? You get to be happy a larger percentage of the time. Cool. The way I play, I basically never get to be happy. I'm happy 8 times a year. But we wind up at the same
Right.
place. I'd prefer to be really, really happy 8 times a year and be annoyed most of the time than squeak out a
Well,
little one and then
that explains everything, man. You're annoyed all the damn time. You go to the casino, you get
I
pissed
am
off
an
because you lost, and they can tear me up in the comments. So that's all good.
I think that's a
I'm,
reasonable assessment. I really
I'm
do.
just kidding.
No, I know you are, but it's
No,
not
but yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
I don't tear you up. I could if
You
or
don't
let me
tear me
let me
up.
put it
You're
this
fine.
way. Let me put it this way. If you think what I'm doing is tearing you up, I'm like in
No,
second gear. I'm like in
you know what's
second
funny?
gear. Like
You used to kind of tear me up in the beginning, and everybody's got to know this, right? Because I don't know, maybe it's just my personality, but I think you called me a dumbass or something about I got some math calculation wrong, right? And you're like, you don't understand basic math. I'm like, wait a minute, I understand basic math. I must have added wrong somewhere. And so I think I emailed you or you emailed me, and I said, where did I get that wrong? And like literally, like as a student to who I know is a professor, where did I get the math wrong? And you're like, blah 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 blah. This is I'm like, oh, that's right. Like I didn't see it for what it was, and you like brought me back to earth. I'm like, thanks for that. Now I understand it. Like now I
yeah, and I
understand that
probably
calculation. And I think that changed everything because it was like I didn't come at you like you're being a jerk. I'm like, wait a minute, this guy
yeah.
pissed me off because he called me out, but I did say that wrong, and now I'm questioning everything I thought about how that calculation works. So I made you
Yeah, I
draw me a
probably
picture. It was cool. I'm like, now I get it.
that's
Like,
the
thanks for
trade-off,
the
right? Yeah,
yeah.
well, you're welcome. Well, thanks for putting up with me. The trade-off is that I actually will put the effort in to try and help people. I really will, and you know that now, and
Oh
obviously
my
you couldn't
god,
have
yeah.
known that in the
People,
beginning. But
yeah.
but people well, I think maybe to put some historical context, there are other. I mean, this goes way way back, many years, long before you ever had a channel. I have gotten into what started out as me trying to be very polite and helpful discussions with people who run gambling based YouTube channels and things like that. And I would immediately get just absolute downpour of nonsense out of them. And it was very aggressive, like loud wrong. And I burned through all of my tolerance long before I ever met you. And so I kind of like sort of assumed that everybody out there trying to do a gambling channel is got a little bit of shyster in them, right? Which is not fair, but I go so used to it. I was like, I don't know what your angle is yet, but like you're either intentionally making this mistake or you literally don't know what's going on. And in both cases, we don't need the voice of this world being someone who doesn't know. So I was like probably too sharp about that. But like I think I realize about you that you actually do want to get it right, and you realize about me that I actually have a place in my heart and mind to actually help people, and I genuinely want to help people.
Well,
And so now we
teacher.
have a wonderful rapport about it. Well, I appreciate that, but
you explained like, and I remember the thing. Now I can't remember which calculation it was. It was some probability thing, and you explained
the first thing we ever argued about was the probability of winning the place. Like if you place the 4 versus like having a comeback win, and like I remember we got that was a long time ago. Yeah. We got into that kind of thing too, because I was like, it doesn't make any difference how many 4 like. You're putting your money out there now. So the only thing that matters is this. And I was like, I swear, run it. I promise you'll get it right. If you're getting it wrong, you've got a problem in the code kind of thing. But yeah, well, that was,
then that's what, and it was also
the early days of discourse, but
right. But there was also the thing I was doing, and I still can't explain this right. The math, this doesn't work, but the numbers show it, which is my assertion that 20% 22 to 26% of the time, you get I call it a PSO. It's not a true PSO, not a 0.7.
Well, that's the problem. The reason I argue with you is you're calling something a PSO that's not a PSO.
Right. Yes, what I meant is a shooter gives you nothing. Like shooters and no box number hits. That's the number that I'm always claiming. I'm like, yes, and I'm like, I'm not counting the point, whatever. And like now I explained it well enough. I think you understand it. What I'm tracking, because I track the things I track are how many times can I get paid on something? So if a shooter has a 7 roller and they're all shit numbers, that doesn't matter to me. So I look at, those metrics are the ones that matter.
When you said there was like, oh yeah, go ahead. We got to finish.
No, finish up your thought. Finish your thought.
Well, I remember you said like something like 28% of people PSO. And I said, you can either believe me that that's not true, or if you don't, I have great news for you. You wait for a point to be established, and then you can hop the 7s. You're going to make $1 billion doing that. If what you're saying is true, then go make $1 billion off of it. Like, why are you arguing with me? You've got a money printer, and so like, trust me, you didn't just stumble on a thing. Like, and so like it wouldn't work that way. And so so we like arrived in a place of harmony.
I was just misstating my.
And
data.
that's okay. And I'm too sharp in the beginning anyway. But like I said, before I know, I just like everybody. There's so many people out there selling snake oil. I don't have a long leash for people, especially when I try. I mean, with some people I used to try, and I would start out very kind and try and be helpful, and they want no piece of it. And I'm like, okay, well now I don't have time for it anymore. So anyway, I've already talked for a minute. We were like, I wonder how much stuff we have to talk about. And like,
we start every show. We're like, hey, can we fill an hour? I don't know. I don't think I even asked you one question I had on my list, so it's all good. Well, that means we just got to do it.
Well, I mean, I would like to, you tell me. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think what you should do is, I know you have a list, and I would do this. We could have other people on. I don't have a problem with talking to other people too, but I don't do the Discord thing. I'm not real active, but like if people want to I'd be more than happy for you to collect a series of questions that maybe have a little bit more specific answers to them, and you can let me know beforehand, or we can play this like game where hopefully I don't get stumped or say something dumb, but I'm willing to kind of do impromptu if you want, or I can actually prepare maybe more concise answers to not just the stuff that you have. If people are listening, I mean, hopefully people are listening. The goal is to get you more stuff out there, and like let them ask. I'm happy to. I don't care. They can ask. I guess maybe there's some questions I wouldn't answer, but it'd be pretty hard for me to think of one that I wouldn't want to answer. So not you. I'm happy to answer your questions too, but if you want to put it out there to the whatever community at large, to maybe there's something I can help people understand better. I'd be happy to do it. I'm happy to shoot the shit
Sure.
with you for hours at a time.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what we end up
Well,
doing.
because
But
there's so many cool things to talk about. Like, Victor's got his quantum dice influence thing.
yeah,
George from CY, we're doing the Dice Throwers tournament. I want to get your take on this at some point. Maybe next show we'll do this, but
yeah.
I know the anti-dice
I
control.
want a random number generator, a literal one, like equals
Oh, we will.
rand between in Excel,
I'm
and just I want it to
at-
compete, and it might not win, but
yeah,
I really think it has the same probability.
I'm doing it. We already talked about it. I'm going to have a WinCraps RNG enter
Yeah,
the contest, and we're going to
that's
have
nice.
an actual person just hucking and chucking, probably Greg doing it
Yeah,
too. But now here's the thing. So we talk about like moving the ball, and just consider this till next time. But we talk about the statistics that move the ball, or that move the goalposts, so to speak, right?
yeah,
There was the SRR, the SOR. Now there's BSR. My favorite stat is BSR. I think that one actually is meaningful to me. It's the one that is how many box numbers do you hit between sevens?
sure.
Like I care about that because that's where I can actually take money from them, right?
I personally can't think
But
of a better acronym for it either. But go ahead.
nah, I hear that. What if you're looking at like if there is a metric, right? Even on pure randomness, right? Eight and a half rolls per shooter is the quote unquote magic number, right? Okay,
Sure.
of those 8.5 rolls, how many of them are typically in the box with the puck is on? Right? It's 2.5 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So as
Right.
a thrower, can I make it 4? That's the sort of thing that I think is an interesting statistic to measure. If you think you can do this, that's a one to look at. Like, did you move that needle? Because that needle actually has money attached to it. I like that
Sure.
one. For this tournament that we're doing, which is all the shooters, you've heard the thing. For the final round, what George has come up with is a point system. So it's this combination of like, okay, you got your roll length, which is great, and then he's arming the score to keep it fair as a quality roll. So he's saying like, come out sevens are worth a point, come out craps are minus a point. Hitting a point is worth an extra thing. If you hit the fire bet, you get an extra point per multiple points hit. He's like trying to like establish like
Yeah.
some sort of a weighting system on the quality of your rolls as well. In the end, you're going to say, okay, this roll was a 246 point roll. It was
Yeah.
10 rolls. It was worth 240. I rolled 18. It was worth 190 because I had a bunch of shit porn numbers in there or something.
Right.
Is that something that you think is a valuable way to look at yourself and say, yes, I'm getting better quality rolls on average as a thrower? And if not, is there a thing you as a math person would ever say, this is not that proves it, but this is a good thing to measure that would give me kind of oh, that's interesting. Like, that's what I want to get from you. So what's going to give you side eye to go, that's kind of cool. What's the metric that wouldn't have you rolling your eyes? So I'll leave it at that. I want to leave it there. Don't answer
Yeah,
yet.
I'll think about it.
Think about that. Because I think
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's moving the goalpost, but I think it's interesting that he came up with this kind of system to measure it. And it's really a way to break a tie between two guys that both roll 27. That's what he wants to avoid. And like, here's the way to break a tie. So anyway, consider that, and we'll talk about that on the next one.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah, it has been a long time. This might have to be 2 episodes. I may have to cut this in half. Somewhere.
You do with the content whatever you want, man.
Right. It's good. No, it's just.
I feel a little bad to talk for that long, but also I enjoy it.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
It's all, dude. We can talk forever. This is fun. I love, and again, you always teach me something through these things. But there's always.
I'm glad. I hope you get something out of it. I hope the listeners get something out of it. I don't want it just to be me telling my life philosophy about stuff. Like, who cares at the end of the day?
There's lots of good nuggets. Lots of good math nuggets in there for me. So, and I got some good one-liners that I can use when I'm talking. The thing is, like, when I'm doing the demonstrations on my tables, it's good to have a fallback. Like, here's a thing I can talk about and frame this conversation in a way that makes sense. And you've given me a bunch of little nuggets today that I can do that with and say, remember when we talked to JB? You know what I mean? And we can kind of bring that back home. And here's the math playing out in front of you. I think that's a beautiful thing. So every time we talk, I get something great out of it. So I appreciate your time like you wouldn't believe.
Happy to do it, man. And if, like I said, the next time you just tell me when you want me to do it again, and I'm happy to do it. I enjoy doing it. It's fun to talk about. And if there's a more specific thing that other people can I can help them understand or get into or answer questions or whatever. I mean, I'm happy to do it either literally live, I guess. I mean, I don't want to handle like trying to deal with chat and stuff, but you know how to do all that stuff. Go for it. Or just collect, use your other outlets and Discord and things and just get a dozen questions or whatever. And I'll give you my opinion, or if they have actual factual answers, I'll answer them. But
we can do that. Yeah. I think there's a couple formats. I think this is more conversational and fun. I think like a live Q&A kind of thing is a whole different thing. It's a different can of worms because you're going to get random questions and who knows what's going to happen and guests come on and, that's less of a Fireside Craps sit down chat, more of a barrage.
We don't have to ever do it. Yeah, no, I mean,
that'd be cool. I mean, that's
I can imagine it devolves very quickly sometimes, but
it's
again,
not that
just
bad.
more like if there are other people have questions, collect them and
we'll
weave them into our
Now you would like it. It's more about, like I said, here's a question that nobody understands. Can you get the whiteboard out and show us? Like that's going to be that kind of a show where it's visual and we can kind of get through it. So we'll get to that for sure as we move forward. But yeah, man, I got to get rolling. Thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.